Hello, everybody. It's great to be here one more time today. My name is Gary Fowler. I'm the CEO, president, founder of GSD Get You Done Venture Studios, a premier AI and quantum venture studio and family office located in the heart of Silicon Valley. I'm a 17-time serial entrepreneur with several unicorns under the belt. I was on the original management team of Click Software, which is sold to Salesforce for $1.35 billion, and also Eva.ai, an AI HR tech company co-founded with Dr. David Yang. We believe at GSD that intellectual capacity is evenly spread, but opportunities are not. And so today on GSD Presents Top Global Startups, where I go beyond the pitch deck and into the minds of builders shaping the future. My guest today is someone who sits at a fascinating intersection of Silicon Valley innovation and the soil beneath her feet. Tim Bucher is the founder and CEO of Agtonomy. He's not just building another AI company. He is truly redefining how the physical world operates. He's a serial entrepreneur and veteran engineer. He's helped launch iconic products like the iPad and Xbox with multiple successful exits to companies like Apple and Microsoft. Well, what makes his journey truly unique is this. He's also a lifelong farmer. From his own vineyards at Trattore Farms, Tim is turning agriculture into the real-world lab for what he calls physical AI. He's embedding intelligence directly into machines that work the land. At a time when agriculture faces massive labor shortages, sustainability pressures, and rising global demand, Tim is building systems that could fundamentally reshape how we feed the world. The conversation today is about technology, resilience, and reimagining one of the oldest industries on earth. So with that, I'd like to bring Tim on board. Hi, Tim.
Hi, Gary. How you doing?
Good. It's great to have you here today.
Great to be with you.
So, Tim, you've built products that change how billions interact with technology. What made you decide and pulled you away from consumer tech into agriculture?
Really good question. I have a somewhat of a unique background. I think you alluded to it in your intro, where I've been a farmer my whole life and continue to farm at Trattore Farms, as you mentioned. And I've also been in Silicon Valley. I actually accidentally got into high tech while I was going to undergrad at university for agriculture. Accidentally took
Where did you go to
a course.
school?
I did my undergrad work at UC Davis, a great institution. I wanted to be, the greatest winemaker and viticulturalist in the world, and I had to take a computer course because, accidentally took a computer course, and that changed my. It didn't change my vector. It just added a new passion to my life. So I was extremely passionate about agriculture, and then I found a new passion, and I didn't give up my old passion. And so, in parallel, for decades, I've been working in Silicon Valley as well as working on my own farm. And I never brought those two worlds together until Agtonomy. So, what I was seeing happening on my own farm with expenses, rising with labor shortages, as you mentioned in your intro, skyrocketing. I mean, the labor gap is tremendous in agriculture and many other industrial markets. Regulation changes were really impacting my farm, in terms of overtime and things of that nature. And then, I call it environmental volatility. Use whatever word you want, but I've learned all kinds of new things like atmospheric rivers and things like this of late. And the reason why that has an impact on agriculture is you have this really big spike need for labor force, to get whatever you were going to do before that thing happened, and dealing with wildfires and all this other stuff. And so it's been a real challenge. And I saw the writing on the wall for my own farm that it was going to go out of business if I didn't do something. And I
Mhm.
had automated so many things on my farm, and you're welcome to come out and visit anytime. It's not too far away from Silicon Valley. But the one thing I hadn't was some of the outdoor orchard work and vineyard work, because I also grow olives for olive oil. So type saying, "Hey, I'm going to build this thing to save Trattori Farms." It worked really well. Showed it to my friends in Silicon Valley that I've been working with on other companies, and I said, "Look what I did to save Trattori." And they said, "You're an idiot. This is about saving the world. Let's start a company." And that's how Agtonomy was born. So many startups were born in a garage. Agtonomy was born literally in a barn.
Oh, there you go. I love that. I grew up on a farm in Pennsylvania, just FYI, in a little village of 500 people. So I can smell
Nice.
the hay and straw
Yeah. Yeah. There you go.
and the clover too, by the way.
Oh yeah, clover's good. House.
So, was there a specific moment on the farm that you realized, hey, this industry is broken and I can fix it?
Yeah, I mean, it dealt with the economics, meaning, looking at the bottom line and going, we're all on a path to extinction, farmers, it appears, with all these pressures we have against us. And I said, the only way out is to innovate our way out. And that's when I started down the path of, creating this prototype, and had some friends. I even had my son helping out as well, and when he was really young, and that's, that was the genesis. And what was interesting, Gary, was I didn't kind of realize just how broad this problem was when I first started Agtonomy. But it's the same everywhere. It's not just a United States problem. It's a problem in Asia. It's a problem in Europe. It's a problem, in all countries these days. The average age of a farmer, for example, in the United States is now approaching 60 years old. I mean, that's the average, Gary. Like it's getting up there, right? The next generation isn't going into these dirty jobs. The average age of a Japanese farmer is approaching 70 years old. So I guess the impact really struck me as my colleagues started bringing more market data to bear and say, hey, look, we got to do something for the world here. And we went all in and said, let's do this.
Well, I mean, we got a lot of things that are vector and, they're coming against us, right? So on one side, we've got temperatures on this planet people don't realize. I mean, it could be up 14 degrees C by the end of the century. And I did a long range weather forecasting model back in 91, 92, where we looked at weather's reoccurring patterns over time. And we started looking at historical weather, Tim, that has profound impact. Like the summer of 1816, I don't know if you're familiar with it, but it's called the year without the summer. There was an explosion Mount Tambor, Indonesia, that sent volcanic gas around the world and created a nuclear winter. In fact, in New York City in July, it was freaking snowing. And what happens in those it's kind of like COVID, right? In those catastrophic circumstances, well, that first year there were no grains, so people ate all the animals. But what happens the second year? There were riots worldwide.
Yeah.
And people don't understand that, we got I just came back from Africa. I was in Nigeria, which is, the average population in Africa is 19.5 years. There's 54 countries there. And, by 2050, you have to double the food supply, as I said. And you can't increase the number of cattle because 26% of the pollutions. We need plant-based protein, right? And it's just like, and then from the farm from the field to the table, we've got to optimize all the processes just like you're doing, or nothing good's going to happen. This is not something people don't get it. It's like they're going to die by 2050. This is not done.
That's right. That's right. I mean, there's a lot of, great things happening in AI with chatbots and your assistants and everything. But, if we can't employ this technology to help feed the world, it's an existential, problem for our global society, right?
It's not a threat. We're just going to die. You know what I mean? It's a binary thing at some level, right? This is just not like, and then you got so there's approximately 8.2 billion people on the planet Earth today. By the end of this century, there could be 13 billion. Then you look at the global climate change. The average temperatures around the world by 2300, right? By this next century, could go up anywhere from 7 to 14 degrees Fahrenheit.
Yeah.
And then you're talking about it, and maybe more, right? Some people are saying C, not Fahrenheit. If it goes up that much, imagine what's going to happen. We wonder why there's so many. I remember Dr. Crick many, many years ago. Crick had been opened the meteorology department at Caltech. And in fact, his visiting professor was Einstein. I met him when he was like in his 70s. He was so he'd been at Caltech, and he came up with this nonlinear approach to weather, which is a pattern over time. And we were talking about what was going to happen. He said, Gary, you don't understand. people aren't going to be able to eat because these crazy, you're going to have forest fires in places like California. You're going to have hurricanes in areas that have never had them. And the power of the hurricane, if the hurricane is, if 150 miles an hour is a category 5, you're going to have something that's 200, but it's not like it's linear in terms of strength. You know what I mean? It's like if it's 10 miles per hour faster, it could be 3 times the power. You know what I mean?
Yeah, yeah, I agree with you. I hear you too, and it's something that we don't have a big enough discussion around, right? And I think that's where the thing that excites me is that now this notion of physical AI has really come into focus in a much big way than it used to be, especially in these industrial markets. And I believe that's the only way out on these challenges that that you're talking about here, right?
Yeah, I
So
agree.
so at least it's not all doom and gloom, at least according to Tim. We just got to take action, and that's what companies like Agtonomy are doing, which is I am excited.
I was with the folks from Taylor Farm. I did a keynote at one of the family office events in Dana Point, and so there's several of the farming families were there. And I also spoke at the UN twice about technology as a tool for peace. And I said, maybe we don't get it. I don't know. We got maybe these cushy diplomatic jobs. People didn't like it. I actually got a call the next day, but I said seriously, like I'm really concerned. As
Yeah,
a poor guy, grew up on a farm myself. And like we don't have enough food. I mean, nothing good's going to happen. You know what I mean? You can have maybe a week where you don't eat, or maybe 3 days without water if you're lucky. But then nothing good happens, right? And
yeah,
both sides of it we got to fix. And what you're doing is, I call it ag infobesity, just by the way. So I call it the infobesity problem. The data is out there, but we have not captured it so we can make the right kind of decisions.
yeah. I like that. Yeah, I agree. Good.
And guys like you that are really smart, that have done incredible things, can change it. So how does both being a farmer and a technologist change the way you see problems compared to traditional founders?
Yeah, I think being a farmer has been really important in terms of understanding the plight. It's kind of what you were just talking about, right? Is people don't get it, but farmers get it. The challenge is not that many farmers have deep technology roots. And the handful that do, not all of them are, focused on really trying to help, both agriculture and technology, or employ technology to help agriculture. So I think it's been a unique perspective I've had, and I didn't realize how powerful it was until, we really started Agtonomy, because ag tech is a term that's been coined for not that long, Gary, right? I mean, 2 years ago, you didn't hear about ag tech. And when you are talking about it these days, if you don't understand sort of the ag part of it, you're not going to come up with solutions that have a high probability of success. And
Agree.
I'll give you an example, right? Because I'm a farmer, I know how important, when it comes to equipment, the trust that we as farmers have in equipment that's been out there by companies that are over 100 years old, right? And take your pick, right? You got Kubota, you got John Deere, you got, you know, all these companies. We always talk about colors.
I don't know if they're still around. Ingersoll Rand, we had those in the old days.
So Ingersoll Rand used to own Bobcat, right? And
Yeah,
Bobcat
yeah.
now is owned by Doosan. And they're actually one of our partners, and they make
Oh, wow.
incredible equipment, right?
By the
But
way, I had so much fun. We had a bobcat, and I remember you'll appreciate it. The first time I got on it, my dad said, "Hey, listen, you can take this around." I didn't realize if you put the front bucket down, uh, I was doing the dirt and I was practicing with it. You can flip the thing. I got this thing up there, and I
yes, you
thought
can.
my dad said you're going to kill yourself. What I mean? I'm like, oh,
Yeah.
you got a problem, Houston.
Well, and let's bookmark that, because that has an implication on what Actonomy is doing too. But before I get to the part about tractors, going back to the perspective that folks who have both ag and technology background have, they understand on the ag side that for a new company to build a tractor or a robot or some kind of retrofit kit, that just doesn't make any sense, because you're not going to get the acceptance from the grower. And so when we started Agtonomy, some of my colleagues said, okay, let's build the greatest tractor in the world. And I said, hold on a minute. That would actually be the stupidest thing in the world to do. And they were like, well, what do you mean, Tim? We're a startup. We're going to build the greatest tractor. I said, you don't understand. Farmers have their trusted brands. They need the incredible designs and manufacturing they have for equipment that can last in these harsh environments. They have the dealer network for parts and service, because I've called up my dealer for, on a Sunday morning at 2 o'clock during harvest to say, hey, I'll meet you at the parts shop. I need that belt, or I need that clutch, or whatever it is. And then the third thing that these trusted brands have is financing. And so it was interesting at the beginning, everybody on the team was like, oh, we're not building robots. I said, we are, but we're not going to do it alone. We're going to accelerate the digital transformation of the existing equipment companies, because they know where the puck is going, to use a term, in terms of skilled labor continuing to go down. No next generations like these dirty jobs. So that means less people to operate their equipment. But they're the world's greatest at building incredible equipment, distributing that through dealer networks and financing it, etc. But they're not the best in the world at AI, or at what we call now physical AI, to really make that equipment super smart, right? They have smart equipment, but now we're talking about super smart, right? When they can operate autonomously, and one operator can manage, an entire fleet.
About 6 years ago, that was doing some autonomous, and I thought about it, like on the farm, it would be great if you were going down to harvesting, and you could use autonomous vehicles to be able to do that. And several of the companies in GSD use drones for things like water stress analysis.
Correct.
And then if you take an integrated approach, Tim, take all of it together as one, right? The Germans have a phrase, the sum of the parts equal the whole. If we tie it all together as one, we can start making a 360-degree decision on what needs to be done, and then use an AI to do it, right? Not just to think about it, to do it.
Exactly. I call that closing the loop of farming and creating the ultimate farm agent, because you have all this data, but farmers don't want data. They want action. But now on the action side, to determine exactly when to do that spray, or exactly when to do that mowing job, whatever it might be, you would love to have the work to get that work done. You'd love to have help on that too, because that's where they're struggling the most. So if you can inform the autonomous equipment when to go by data, and have the grower just have an easy button, right? So they can just push the easy button, go and do that. And automatically those 10 autonomous tractors will go out with those sprayers and get that job done before that weather front came in, right? And so it's about having all these services, all this information from, your soil moisture, your, all kinds of other sensors in the field, plus weather information, plus all kinds of other information assimilated through AI, and then inform physical AI solutions to actually go and get the job done. And that's the ultimate. And Gary, that's where we're headed. And that's what Agtonomy is on the mission of. But the first thing we're doing is making sure that the growers can get the work done, and then we can fold those other pieces in a little more easily with pulling all that data together.
But the one thing I just wanted to just touch base, because one of the things, it's not just what you're doing now, Tim, right? Because I have this same conversation with a doctor, one of the doctors who graduated from Yale. We had the exact conversation with health tech, because the problem is we don't know what we don't know. And they have all these machines, and they're not gathering the information inside of a doctor's office to be able to help make the decision. And again, they've got the same kind of infobesity problem. They got more patients. They got stressed because they've got insurance demands, and there aren't enough of them to go around. So what you do there, and I'm feeling it, can be used in all kinds of different ways. It has to, for our society, we got to have an integrated. You saw that at Apple, I'm sure, right? We got to have an integrated approach to everything, and we don't do it. It's insane.
Yeah. Well, we're getting the capabilities to do that now in these very important segments like agriculture. So, we're out there now operating autonomously in equipment made by incredible manufacturers like Kubota and Bobcat and others. And while we're out there getting that work done, we're also collecting a lot of data
Yeah,
that can then inform the jobs even better. And it's not that Agtonomy is doing all the analytics, because Gary, doing analytics on data, as you know, with all the tools we have, is actually becoming really inexpensive. You know what's the most expensive part in this whole thing is actually collecting the data.
that's it.
But if
Why not have those intelligent sensors in the field so then when we get down through and understand, when we need to go down through and hydrate, what the levels of, is it time to use this fertilizer or that? I mean, we've had like, in the old days, we had the rule of thumb, right? Well, I think it needs to be done. Let's go down through and do it. But in reality, you could stress the soil and kill it.
exactly, it's funny. I was one of the first farmers that went no till. That means that I don't, tear up my rows each year. And my neighbors kind of laughed at me and they said, "No, I got a disc, every year." And I said, "Well, why do you disc?" And they said, "Well, because my grandfather did it."
Yeah.
Right? But now having mobile sensors, because you don't even need field sensors anymore, Gary. You can have these autonomous vehicles that are basically these mobile field sensor, these mobile labs, doing work like mowing, spraying, cultivating, dipping, seeding, you name it, and collecting data at the same time to then provide the actions for the grower in that closed loop farm agent that we were talking about a bit ago.
Well, and that's important because you can take them anywhere, anytime, any place to be able to use them, to be able to have profound. I mean, the difference between success and failure on the farm is going to be, do I understand what I have and how do I make it better? And am I continuously sensing it so that I can make those improvements, especially with the climate change situation, the way it is now?
Yep.
Do I need to hydrate the ground? Do I need to add these fertilizers? What's the best crop to plant here? Is soybeans a good crop or not? And what will be some kind of complement, and do it autonomously? Like that,
Correct.
I mean, it's going to change everything.
I mean, look, drones have opened up so much for agriculture because from the air, you can see vegetative growth and deficiencies and whatnot. So you have eyes in the sky, which is great. But what you really need is both eyes in the sky and boots on the ground. And in obviously, for your listeners, when we say the word agriculture, it means a lot of different things to people. Most people think of corn and soybeans and wheat and whatnot, but there's a whole nother segment of agriculture called high value crops or permanent crops, and that's where we get all fruits, our nuts, our grapes that come on vines. And those are permanent crops. You don't rotate them every year. You don't harvest them and then dig up the dirt and plant a different crop the next year. And it's in those crops that we really haven't had the technology to operate safely and farm precisely through those crops, because you're dealing with a much different category of crop in terms of value. Like if you
Mhm.
and I created an autonomous solution and we took out 100 stock of corn when we were operating, it's a bummer, but it's not the end of the world, right? It's only a few dollars. If we were to create an autonomous solution and go through a pistachio orchard and we took out one pistachio tree, we're talking about thousands of dollars, right? And you're operating really, really close, like within an inch of these kind of crops. So we haven't had the level of compute from an economic point and be on board these vehicles and the capabilities of the sensors today. I mean, lidar used to be $20,000 and now it's like sub $1,000. Not that lidar can do everything. Cameras are really the most important sensor in agriculture. But by having now the technology that can precisely navigate through these kind of high value crops and precisely farm around that crop, it's been a big game changer, and that's what Agtonomy has really opened up. I think we were one of the first to really, I won't say perfect because we're always improving. We're always training on new models, but we have quite a leadership position in these high value crops today.
No, I mean, what you're doing is the way the world's going to be a better place. And then, look at things like, I mean, it's interesting because with my water stress analysis company, we're looking at almonds. I didn't realize how much water almonds use. It's
Yeah,
unbelievable.
yeah.
Do you think we'll get to a point, by the way, we'll have so much data, we'll decide not to do certain crops because we can't afford the consumption of things like almonds and water?
Absolutely. I mean, I think we're already seeing that too. Um, there's certain regions like that, the temperature has been changing. And so, in the grape industry, there used to be some cooler climates that were great for certain types of grapes like Chardonnay or Pinot Noir. But the temperatures are getting too high where the data is saying, hey, this doesn't make sense to grow these kind of crops anymore in this area. So if not the crop itself, the varietals of the crop are definitely changing given the information that we do have, whether it's environmental, whether it's the soil, whether it's the other parameters that really impact the crops that you grow. Um, so I think it's happening. I think it's going to happen more precisely and more frequently as this data now is available to us.
So Eva just has a question for you. So I don't know where she got this. So she said you hold 50 plus patents. What's one breakthrough you're particularly proud of that people not fully appreciate?
One breakthrough that I've been involved in.
Yeah, one. So you hold 50 plus patents. What's one breakthrough you're particularly proud of, but that people may not fully appreciate?
Well, I'll give you one in high tech and one in ag. Can I give
Mhm.
two answers?
Yeah, sure.
So I spent a good part of my life developing this thing that people don't really think about today. It's called multi-touch. And I was working for Steve Jobs, and he was really adamant about, like, I want something that I can read, a screen that I can read, and I can, zoom in and zoom out. And at that time in technology, there was, resistive touch, which basically, if you put one finger down, it could sense that. If you put two fingers down, it would average between them, and you couldn't really get accuracy on that. So to create multi-touch, where you can have multiple digits on a screen and then be able to do gestures like zoom in, zoom out, swipes, etc., that was a really big deal. And that was something that I really spent a good portion of my career doing research in and enabling, especially for Apple back then. Now, multi-touch is everywhere on pretty much every kind
Wow,
of
that's
screen.
amazing. I love that.
So that's a geeky thing that not many people know about. But I certainly I know more about multi-touch technology than anyone should know. But it was a good breakthrough. And then on the ag side, there were a lot of things that we did many years ago when we were starting. Not many, I mean, 5-6 years ago when we were starting Agtonomy. It seems like many years ago, by the way, Gary, as you know, in the startup world. And we were sitting there going, well, wait a minute, like when you do an autonomous vehicle in a city, there are street maps, right? There's grids. It's kind of, you got some structure to it. When you're doing autonomy, off-road autonomy on a farm, there's not a lot of structure to it. So you
Mhm.
don't necessarily want to drive a vehicle. Remember those days where you had people, and still to this day, right, in their, Waymo vehicles or Zoox vehicles or whatnot, kind of doing more precise mapping. You don't really, farmers don't have, they're already struggling with labor, so they don't really have the time to go out and drive everything to kind of map out the land. And so we came up with a concept, and my CTO and I were saying, wait, it has to be aerial imagery. You got to use aerial imagery. And if you can get somewhat close, because it doesn't have to be a millimeter accuracy, like, people say, oh, you got to have GPS all the time. Well, you can't always use GPS when you're in these permanent crops like orchards where there's canopy that goes over and you can't see the sky. And so we said, well, if we start aerial imagery, we can do a mapping, a planning of the site, and then at least have the vehicles kind of know where to get started. Like, here's some crops over here, here's some crops over there. And it sounds like a very simple thing, and it kind of is, but no one had really patented that. And that's something that Agtonomy has patented. So the use of aerial imagery to be able to say, to show up with 10 tractors, let's on a 1,000-acre farm, and literally within a minute just say push a button and it goes and farms the land. It knows kind of where the crops are and everything. But when it gets close to the crop, then the onboard perception stack kind of takes over and navigate safely through and precisely farms around those crops, as I was talking about earlier.
No, that's fantastic. I love what you're doing. Listen, we're coming up to the top of the show. If you want to stay on for a few minutes afterward and wrap up, that would be great. So closing thoughts, Tim, and how do people get a hold of you?
Well, the thing that I would love your listeners to think about is there's an incredible revolution happening in agriculture and in other industrial markets. But a lot of people shy away from jobs like, oh, it's agriculture, it's dirty. With physical AI, it's attracting a younger generation, and it's super exciting. It's super meaningful, and it has a lot of opportunity, even more opportunity than self-driving cars, as far as establishing businesses in that can be multi-billion, multi-trillion dollars even. And so, I'd love to end by saying it's a great industry to be part of right now, especially during this revolution. And then if people want to get a hold of me, they can contact me on LinkedIn and find agtonomy.com as our website and learn more about what we're doing there.
It's great, Tim. I want to thank you for joining our show today. I really appreciate it. And what you're doing is making the world a bit better place, which is going to help us all. It's not about just ourselves. It's about our kids and our grandkids being able to live in a normal kind of way. So what you're doing is fantastic. And to all of you out there, I want to thank you very much. We're over several million views at this point in time. We're reaching 73 plus countries around the world. And it's thanks to all of you that we're here. Remember, GSD is a family office, GSD Reach, and our AI Frontier Development Group. Our thing is to help this world become a better place by using some of the most frontier technologies in the world to do it. And so I thank you for joining us. I thank all of you. Stay happy, stay safe, and stay healthy. And I'll be back to you again soon with another exciting edition. And as soon as this is over, we can talk for a few minutes, Tim.